Yep, I agree. Let's move on and rattle through some of these other transfer rumours doing the rounds in. So we've got the Kanati one done. Before we go into incomings, let's look at potential outgoings, because obviously we saw Kostas Tsimikas play at left back yesterday in the first half. We saw Milos Kerkez come on in the second half, and then we saw Andy Robertson play at centre half. There's definitely a case of 3 into 2 don't go here. And I think Tsimikas put some posts on social media yesterday saying that his next season at Liverpool's now underway. I don't know how cryptic that was, but it's something's going to have to give here, David, at some point during the next couple of weeks, possibly even before the tour to Asia gets underway. Can you see all 3 of them heading on that tour? Can you see something happening in the next few days?
Oh, I could easily see all 3 of them ending up on the tour, because you're so reliant on other clubs to come in to make a transfer happen. So, and at the moment, that's not happening. So, you could definitely see all 3 going on the tour. But as you say, there's got to be a resolution there. They're not going to want to go into the season with 3 left backs, and ideally not going to want to go into the season playing Andy Robertson at centre half either. So, it's a fascinating one. I mean, I would have said going into the summer that Kostas Tsimikas looked nailed on to leave, but the more you see from him on social media, the more you kind of speak to people around him, it looks like there's still a chance he could stay. I mean, as someone quite close to his camp at the start of the summer, where things were up to with him, and expecting to hear that, we'll kind of look at what's out there, but got the answer of kind of it's too early to say at the moment, and then everything happened with Andy Robertson and the stories that came out there, and you were like, well, that'll be why then. So, I still think this is really difficult to call. Again, nobody around Robertson's camp is saying that he's absolutely nailed on to stay, even though the Atletico Madrid one doesn't look like it's going to come off. So maybe they're going to be other clubs in for him, and he's maybe keen. He's had that offer, so now he's keen to go and play more regularly, because clearly Kerkez is going to be first choice. So again, that's a really difficult one to call in terms of which way that one's going to play out. And I would probably, if I was going to lean either way, would maybe lean towards maybe Robertson being the one of the 2 who goes at the moment. But don't rule anything out just yet, because the transfer market, I think you're a fool if you try and predict things in this. And there's there will be interest in both players. It's just whoever it gets firmed up in first, and then is willing to accept that move. So, I'd be amazed if Liverpool start the season with 3 left backs there. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can't see that. I'm the same as you. I after the Robertson talk sort of materialized, obviously Atletico Madrid went in a different direction. Now we don't know if that's because Robertson said, "I'm not going to bother, lads," or if he said, or if his thinking was, "I'm going to stay at Liverpool. They'll sell Kostas Tsimikas." My understanding of Andy Robertson and the way he is as a person, certainly the fighter, the sort of dogged nature of the player, there is not a cat and hills chance I can see him staying around to be second choice. You know what I mean? It's like maybe there's even a promise to him. Look, Andy, you stay, you can be first choice, and we'll bring Kirkus in gradually. But I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm the same as you. It's a very complex situation, and I think if Robertson had left, if he had gone to taking the Atletico Madrid move when it was there, let's assume it was there, then I think that would have probably made Arne Slot and Liverpool's life a bit easier as well. So it's one of those that's going to, I mean, we're going to see very quickly what happens here. I don't think it's going to drag on to the end of the window. I really don't. But something's going to have to give at some point. And it seems more and more that Tsimikas is inclined to stay. He's had so many things that have come out. What was he said? Being at Liverpool's like being on Broadway. I like just playing he's happy to play a small part. You know what I mean? You're never going to hear that from Andy Robertson. The same thing's just not going to come out of his mouth. It's just not. And that's probably almost about managing expectations and what we've come to know of Kostas Tsimikas during his time at the club. He came as a backup and he's been a backup ever since. You know what I mean? So that's his role. So there'd be no difference to him. Whereas it's a massive psychological shift for Andy Robertson, probably Liverpool's greatest ever left back, certainly in the Premier League era, and one of Scotland's greatest ever left backs, to suddenly say, right, I'm just going to accept being a bit part player. I just don't see it. I just cannot see it. In the twilight of his career, he'll want to play for as long as he can.
The very fact that Atletico Madrid interest got as advanced as it did shows you that he's kind of he's having a look what's out there, and he does want to move to kind of go and play more regularly. So we just now the key now is who else is in for him then, who else wants to take him and will play him and offer him that regular football. We just have to kind of wait and see with that. But yeah, that story's not done yet in terms of what happens with him. So, but it's just a case of, clubs have got to firm up that interest. They've got to give an offer to Liverpool that they are willing to accept, and that hasn't happened yet. So we wait and see.
Let's talk about incomings briefly then. So we've got the one that everyone kind of assumed was going to happen after Jarrell Quansah left. It was almost like a natural mathematic conclusion was that Quansah was going to go, Mark Guehi was going to sign, and Liverpool would be reinforced at centre half. Now, obviously, there's a lot of reasons why we've not heard much about transfers over the last week or so. What is your latest on Mark Guehi? Obviously, we heard some reports that Newcastle were back in for him last week as well. So I don't think there's certainly not been much in the media that I've seen over the past few days that have suggested Mark Guehi is any closer to joining Liverpool now than he was 2-3 weeks ago.
No, exactly that. I mean, I kind of asked a question a little while ago. I've been doing too much talking about transfers with people at Liverpool at the moment because of everything that's going on. But and I know this information is still good. And as far as I was aware, about around a week ago when I last asked about this, there was kind of no talks with Crystal Palace around Guehi. I think all the talks have been kind of on the player side and maybe convincing him around a move and seeing whether he'd be open to it. But no kind of movement on the Crystal Palace side of things, which obviously is going to be the main difficulty in terms of this, is convincing them to sell at a price that Liverpool would consider reasonable for a player who's in the last year of his contract. So definite interest there, but nothing kind of moving just yet. Although that can change very, very quickly, by the way. By the time we finish recording this podcast, there could be an offer in there out of nowhere. So, but yeah, as I say, my last understanding on that was that there would be no kind of progress on the club to club side. So we await that really. That's the key aspect of this. But I do think, the fact that the interest is known, I don't think Mark Guehi is completely put off by the idea of moving to Liverpool. It does seem there's some openness to it. But what I would say, and what's an interesting part here, is that if it's not Guehi that they sign at centre half this summer, I think the profile is going to be completely different. The reason that Liverpool, and you talk to people there, the reason that they will be going for him is because they view him, and this is something I wrote about on Substack, is they view him as a kind of a significant market opportunity, is the phrase that was used to me. But generally, the centre half that they've been looking for outside of that opportunity emerging is someone who is a little bit younger, but has still got some first team experience, but would be maybe more willing to come in as kind of a fourth choice. So if it's not Guehi, I think you're going to expect someone who's more aligned with that profile. So you looked at someone like Dean Howson at the age he was, kind of 21, was he? Is he 20? You look at Leone, who's another player they've been linked with. Kouliarakis, another one. I think it's Lenny Yoro before that. It's going to be someone who's more in that kind of age range that they go for if it's not Guehi. I think that's the one kind of certainty. But we don't know how it's going to play out on the Guehi front at the moment. So we wait and see on that one.
And do you think there's anything in the fact that, I know we keep talking about the tour, do you think there's anything pressing in terms of Liverpool's time that we've just seen them play a friendly with two fullbacks playing centre half? Obviously, we do have Konate to come back, so there will be three for the tour in Gomez, Van Dijk, and Konate, with Endo as an option, I suppose, as a break glass option if you needed it. But or the fullbacks, obviously, they could do it again. But do you feel that getting to this stage of the season where the planning is beginning, obviously, for the Premier League season, which isn't too far away, that Liverpool really need to be taking another centre-back on that tour and trying to embed him into the Liverpool system, into Liverpool's playing style?
I don't think they're going to be too worried, because ultimately whoever's going to come in is probably going to be that kind of third, fourth choice. Aren't third if it's Guehi, fourth if it's kind of someone who's a little bit lower down the pecking up, someone who's a little bit younger and a bit more raw. So, it's not like you're thinking, oh God, we've got to get this person ready for the start of the Premier League season. I mean, there's a reason that Kirkes was brought in so early, because the likelihood is he's going to start the first Premier League game of the season. It'd be a big surprise if he doesn't. Similar with Wirtz as well. But this kind of third or fourth choice centre half, there's not a rush. So the idea is with Liverpool, they don't want to make silly decisions. They don't want to be rushed into a deal. They don't want to overpay for Mark Guehi if it does end up being him. So I think they're pretty relaxed about that aspect, because it's not someone who's guaranteed to go into the starting 11. But but yeah, they'll always want to get it wrapped up as quickly as they can. But they also realise that it's not the most important thing in the world.
Now, another link that materialized, I think it was in The Guardian last night, was that West Ham are interested in both Harvey Elliott and Tyler Morton. Obviously, none of them involved yesterday, as they came back quite late from the England youth win in the Euros. So none of them were involved in the squad yesterday. Is this something that you've heard anything about, the two lads linked with West Ham?
I can't vouch for that. I know that's come from the West Ham side, so can't really say anything too much about that. But what I will say is I expect there's going to be big interest in both players, to be honest. I mean, I know with Tyler Morton's case, definite interest from Germany, and a couple of English clubs are knocking around, but a couple in Championship are maybe interested as well. And with Harvey, I know Brighton definitely there, and Newcastle's a name I've heard as well, but I can't vouch for West Ham. But again, it's not a big surprise, is it, that there's big interest in him? I mean, he's absolutely brilliant young player with a heap of Premier League experience already, and I think he's going to thrive wherever he goes. So, it's unfortunate he's moving on, but Liverpool are going to have no problem shifting Harvey Elliott, and I think they're going to get a really good fee for him as well. And yeah, the fact that you're hearing West Ham's name now as well, we're edging towards a kind of bidding war for him, so that can only help Liverpool as well.
And another transfer that's, I think, breaking today, David Johnstein wrote something this morning, was that Victor Gyökeres is very close now to joining Arsenal, which is a striker that they've obviously been after for a while. And obviously, in turn, what that's meant is that Liverpool links to Benjamin Sesko have resurfaced, because Sesko was the one that most people expected was Arteta's favourite, and a lot of people expected that deal to happen. Now, Arsenal have gone elsewhere. The reports that I heard were that Sesko's financial demands were just too high for Arsenal to match, which sounds like he's pricing himself at a premium for sure, because if a top level Premier League club can't afford you, then something's maybe a bit out of sync with your agent and what they're asking. But the reports that I read overnight were that Sesko's agents have been back in touch with Liverpool. Nothing to do with Liverpool pursuing the player. Let's make that clear. It was very much that the reports were that Sesko's agents have been back in touch with Liverpool, trying to see if there's anything still there, following the fact that Arsenal have gone down the Gyökeres route. Sesko's another one to me that feels almost a level below Ekitike. He's very raw, very much a developmental striker. Doesn't seem to tick the boxes that I think Liverpool need to be ticking when it comes to getting a striker. Because in all honesty, I know people say that the Darwin Nunez stuff has run its course, but if you were asking me to pick who Liverpool want up front between Sesko and Nunez this season, I'd go for Nunez. Now, I know that's not a take that most people will agree with, because most people want the shiny new thing, and Sesko perhaps is that for some people, but I don't see it. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I just don't think he's the sort of player that, I think it'd be wrong to say Liverpool won't watch him, because, of course, as you say so often on this podcast, Liverpool will be watching all of the top young players from the top leagues. It's wrong to say they wouldn't be. But I don't think that this lad, Sesko, ticks the boxes that Liverpool will be after, certainly not this summer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, no one at Liverpool's kind of played him down to me in a huge way that makes me think, oh, he's nowhere near the agenda, because, as you say, they will be watching him. But whenever I've seen him, there just is that rawness to his game, and it kind of, if you're selling Nunez to get someone who's a little bit closer to the finished product, then you just, you're going to be disappointed there. I think you're kind of out the frying pan into the fire there. So I just don't, I struggle to see him being someone that gets pursued this summer personally. Maybe we get a big surprise, but I really struggle to see that, really. I think if Liverpool do sign a centre forward, and obviously Nunez leaving is a big part of this, by the way, then I think it's going to be someone who's a little close to the finished product, and maybe Ekitike is that. Obviously, Alexander Isak is still slightly on the agenda until Newcastle firmly say no on that front. So we wait and see on that one. That's that's an interesting one that's still going on in the background. I mean, I feel like when they get back in pre-season training now, you're going to get a bit more of a firm answer on where they're up to with Isak, whether that is a distinct possibility or not. So we'll kind of see with that one, but it's that's an interesting one. But I'd be surprised personally if it was Sesko, maybe even less surprised if it was Isak. But yeah, fingers crossed on that one.
Oh, I like the optimism. Let's take it to the comment on the screen then, because you've teed that one up. David, is there a world where Nunez stays? You were pretty much the first journalist that I can remember, and this was even around the January window, that were pretty adamant on the fact that Darwin Nunez would leave the club this summer. Obviously, he played yesterday, he scored yesterday, he's back in training with Liverpool. We know there was some talk with Napoli, then there was some talk that those provisional discussions had fallen short, and that he wasn't going to be making that move anymore. And now all of a sudden Saudi rumours have begun again in terms of both Darwin Nunez and Luis Diaz, because it seems that there is a bit of a symmetry to those two in terms of the fact that European clubs rightfully are interested in them. The top European Champions League clubs are interested in them. They're both very good players. They're both at premium fees at good ages that European clubs would be interested in them. But there is this lingering Saudi interest that I'm pretty sure suits Liverpool best, even if it doesn't suit the players best, because it would mean, well, it's wrong to say wouldn't suit the players best because it'll mean they get paid a lot more money as well. But equally, in terms of their career and in terms of what their ambitions may be, it probably doesn't tick all the boxes. So let's ask you outright, where do you think we are just now with Darwin Nunez and Luis Diaz?
Yeah, in terms of whether it can see a world where Nunez says, I mean, always that everything's on the table in football and you can't make a player go if all the kind of ingredients aren't there, which is that someone offers you the right amount of money and the player wants to go. So you can never, ever take anything off the table. But I will say, I'd be surprised if he's still here come the start of the season, because the fact is, the player wants to leave to go and play more frequently, and he knows that he isn't trusted by this manager to do that. So he wants to leave. Liverpool are happy to let him go. It's just about the other aspect there, which is someone offering them enough money to want to strike a deal. Now, I think to talk about the parallels with Diaz, which I think are absolutely there. I think what we are definitely seeing from both players is that Saudi is definitely not their first choice. They don't want to go there if they can kind of avoid it, but both are leaving it on the table if a European move doesn't come off for them. So I think what we might see is them drag a bit later into the window. So if Bayern can't put up the money, if Barcelona can't, I mean, Barcelona almost certainly can't for Diaz, then, maybe towards the end, he will consider that Saudi move. And I think similarly with Nunez, if this Napoli thing can't work out and it's completely off the table, if, Atletico Madrid don't firm up their kind of vague interest that they've got in him, then maybe he will consider moving to Al Hilal. But it's, I think that feels kind of certainly likely with Nunez that he would maybe be open to that Saudi move, because we know he was quite open to it in January. So that feels like a possibility for him. And with Diaz, I think he's quite clearly just kind of saying to Al Nassr, just wait, let me see what's out there, and then he'll make his decision. So we kind of have to wait with those ones really to see that. But as I say, I think I'll be quite surprised if Nunez is here at the end of the window. Diaz, I wouldn't be totally stunned. But again, just big possibility for him to leave. So again, it's all contingent on those interested clubs to come with a fee that Liverpool would accept. And as of yet, that hasn't happened.
Now, we've got a few minutes left, so let's just segue from those exits, so from those potential exits of those two, into some of the players that have been linked to Liverpool, perhaps more spuriously, shall we say, than the likes of Mark Guehi. And these are names that are kind of doing the rounds, and you kind of feel that there's nothing going to come of them, shall we say, but who knows? You like to say, well, I've said I'll be covering this podcast again for Dave Davis with you next week, and Dave said, are you going to do a Thursday podcast as well? I said, well, not really, but if something breaks, then obviously we will do that, because it would be silly of us not to. But the names, the last three names that I've kind of got are your Nunez replacement, shall we say, that we've been linked to, Rodrygo from Real Madrid, and of course the one you mentioned there, the one that I think most people are hoping will still be the one, is Alexander Isak at Newcastle. And of course, then on the left side, there's these links to Diaz going and Liverpool perhaps taking the plunge on Malik Fofana, which I think I've not seen him linked to many other clubs in I think Nottingham Forest. I heard something, but they may be with Alanga going, they may be going back in for Bakayoko now at PSV. So I don't kind of know what the take is on Malik Fofana. He's someone that I've studied, I've read a bit on him, I've looked up some of his stats and things like that. I've never actually watched him play regularly enough to know if he does fit the profile. But the people that do watch a lot of football, they say that this lad is absolutely the one that you want to be trying to get in on your left wing, and he would be one that would accept, obviously, being a squad player initially with the hope of developing into a starter. So it's not going to knock Gakpo's nose out of joint too much if you were to sign Malik Fofana. Rodrygo, Isak, Fofana. Anything on any of those lads?
Yeah, so with Isak, like I say, I mentioned this earlier, but you're kind of still in the same situation, just waiting for something firm to kind of happen there in terms of, I just think it's going to get pulled off the table at some point, or the signal will be given that Newcastle are open to it. Yeah. So we just that is a very much a wait and see situation, but I think it feels like that's going to be something that you'll hear firmly on that either way earlier in the window, I would say. And Fofana's an interesting one because again, he's definitely one of those that they're looking at. He's on the radar, but again, it's a big step then to go to the next bit of kind of is he going to be a Liverpool player? Are they going to firm that up and do anything about it? It's interesting. I mean, you kind of don't want to talk about this, by the way, and I don't know what the right way to get into this. But Liverpool are down a forward now, aren't they? Unfortunately, in the most tragic circumstances. So, when they had the full complement, and before this happened, those Malik Fofana links I maybe took with a kind of pinch of salt, because it's kind of, how could you promise him sufficient minutes to come in and that he would develop? Whereas now there are going to maybe be spaces for him there. There's still a big chance that Nunez leaves, that opens up even more minutes for a flexible forward who can play all across the front line. And I guess, that would be ideal for him, is that he can do a little bit of that, because it gives you a young player then who you can pop into a few positions and he can pick up those minutes, and that's how he kind of learns and develops there. So with that one, I wouldn't like to rule it out. I think he's one to kind of keep an eye on. He's definitely an interesting player, and a player that Liverpool are looking at. But and I think the way that the composition of the front line is changing might open up opportunities for something to happen there with that one. And what was the other name? Sorry, so Isak.
It was Rodrygo, the Real Madrid forward.
Rodrygo.
Obviously, again, he's. Yeah. I saw this as agent talk, and I have all the way through. But it does seem like he wants to leave Real Madrid, and it does seem that then, as a result of that, his agent will be hawking him around as many top European clubs as possible. And I think that may be the foundation of the link. But if you've heard any more on it, then feel free to enlighten me.
Yeah, I wonder with this one whether, again, not anything that anybody's told me, but it just kind of, I've got that similar skepticism around this, really, because, Liverpool, are they going to want a Real Madrid cast off, which is what he is? I mean, I know he's still a very, very good player, by the way, not completely doing him down, but it just doesn't, I don't know if he feels, unless Liverpool's seeing him someone who is undervalued by Real Madrid, but I don't know whether that's the case. I don't know. It just, I know they definitely liked him and he tried to sign him in the past, but sometimes you think, oh, will that happen? Therefore, they still definitely like him. And that's not always the case. I'm not, at the moment, I don't think there's anything active in this one, and I'm a little bit skeptical about it. But, there's chances for big changes in that front line. And I just wonder whether, they'll get to the point he will be on the agenda, but he doesn't seem to be at the moment. And as you say, it just has this smell of agent talk about it. I agree with you on that one.
I just want to finish with one other point based on the point you mentioned about Malik Fofana and how Liverpool's forward line obviously has been thrown into chaos, perhaps a bit more than was anticipated, shall we say. And obviously for those listening and those watching, we do have to speak about these things. It's not that it's not out of callousness or not being respectful to what's happened, but Liverpool are building for the new season, and they will need a versatile forward. And that's why David mentioned that the Malik Fofana thing may have some scope. David, do you see any role going forward for Federico Chiesa in this Liverpool side? Again, it's kind of on the back of this, but do you think what's happened could have changed Chiesa's future, in the sense that it did seem that there was talk of Lazio, I think there was talk of Napoli earlier in the window, nothing materialized there. He's come back, he played yesterday. He's obviously been an elite attacking player at some points in his career. He wasn't used much at all. It was pinned on pre-season and his fitness levels and things like that. And even when he did have this sort of mini pre-season last winter, he still wasn't really used by Arne Slot. And it does seem another one that the manager just doesn't fancy. But do you think that this change in Liverpool needing a versatile forward that can play across the front line in all three positions, could Chiesa still be that player for Liverpool?
I mean, he'd have to have some pre-season and really impress on the manager, because I just think it was made so clear towards the back end of last season where he stood in the pecking order, really. And that, as you say, the manager just didn't fancy him at all. I mean, have you ever seen a player turn it around in that circumstances when they're so clearly unfancied? I really struggled to see it. And I thought he was bright at Preston, by the way. And I think, and he is that versatile forward, and they've suffered that loss, which they've got to account for in some way. So, it kind of bizarrely kind of moves him up the pecking order, I suppose. But the expectation going into this summer was that there was going to be big interest in him from Italian clubs. That is there, albeit no one's kind of made anything concrete yet, but there is interest in him there. And I think even with everything that's happened, as it would surely be best for him to go and play more regularly. And I still struggle to see him getting regular minutes as part of this squad, particularly as there are going to be more additions coming for Liverpool. So I really struggle to see that, to be honest, that he turns it around and it works out for him at Liverpool, which is a shame, because he's a likeable guy and they speak very highly of him, and he's a good footballer as well. But I just don't think this manager sees enough in him to think that he's good enough to play for Liverpool in this moment, or he gives the things that the manager wants. So for me, I'd be kind of, like I say, surprised if he's still here at the end of the window, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't end up returning to Italy in some way.
Yeah, I concur with that, as I seem to be in agreement with most of the things that you've said. And Liverpool aren't really playing competitive matches just now, so I can't take my losing curse any further on this podcast just now. They won't have played by the time we do this again next week. So, and then Dave will be back, and I can just kind of go back into my pit. So I need to thank David, obviously, for joining us and going around the houses. Obviously, we did the Jota tribute stuff at the start there. We spoke a lot about the game, and then we spent the second half of the podcast going around the houses on the transfers. So thank you, Dave, for that. David, I noticed on the end of your video yesterday, you kind of mentioned your bread and butter, and I don't think we do that probably enough on this podcast. Is we're thanking you to make sure people are aware of where else they can find your work. You're not just on YouTube. You're not just on Twitter. You have a Substack, which is your very much your livelihood these days as a freelance journalist. And obviously, it's a tough time for freelance journalists when things like this happen, because you are not working for an organization that can just pivot into other areas or ask you to do other things. You're very focused on what your niche is. So please do take a couple of minutes now to give people a bit of an insight into what you're doing on Substack and how they can go and join and support you on what you do over there.
Yeah, so a lot of the insights and things I put on there, so you won't just find them on YouTube. It's there's things I hold back for kind of Substack exclusives, bits about transfers, etc. So I like to think it's definitely worth subscribing to. So if people want to check that out, and as you say, it's in terms of supporting me, allowing me to do everything I do, it's quite huge, really. So if people want to check that out, it's davidlynchlfc.co.uk, and yeah, any support, even if you can. Just a $5 a month to subscribe, or you might want an annual subscription, but it is a massive help. So hopefully people want to check it out and, to maybe read a free piece and see if there's enough insight there to tempt you into a subscription.
Yeah, it's not something that's going to fill your mailbox every day, and it's something that when they do come, they are really worth reading. I read every one. I subscribe. I pay to subscribe. David has never given me a freebie, so it's one of those that I can highly recommend to anyone to do. I really enjoy it, and you may have noticed as well, I'm doing a bit on Substack as well. We have our own one now, which is called "It Was Always Liverpool." It's part of a range of Substacks that we're doing. And "It Was Always Football," and there's an "It Was Always History." We're working on those three just now, so they're all .com. It Was Always Liverpool. .com, it was always football.com, and it was always history.com. I'm doing a bit of work on all three of them just now. So if you do want to delve into Substack, all of ours are free just now. It won't always be like that, but they are just now. So do take the opportunity to go and have a look at them as well and feedback on those. And no adverts on them, which is obviously one of the best things of Substack, although we do have all our usual articles and written content at AnfieldIndex.com that you can enjoy as well. And there'll be more of this as the week goes. I think the transfer show is going to be back this week. It won't be Dave and Trev. They're both on holiday at the same time as it happens, but not together. I think Jack and Lewis will be standing in for them. Lewis is going to do a few other bits for us as he did Daily Red obviously this weekend, and Gags and Grizz will be back later in the week as well, and we'll try and get the content a bit more normalized this week as we look forward to that Asian tour, and obviously keep following all this transfer news. So thank you once again, David, and unless something crops up, I'll see you next Monday. If it does, I'll see you soon.
Thanks very much.
Cheers everyone. Up the Reds.